with that much employment coming to the county, and yet we'd be very capable of missing the opportunity as well if we weren't ready. And so I began to look at the lead time between now and probably 18 months, 2 years, when the construction would be going on. And we have a food pantry in our place, and many of us in the county know that there are an awful lot of people, in addition to the registered unemployed, who are folks largely from generational poverty, for whom this would be an enormous opportunity to get up to the next level, but it's going to need some help. I started out on page 1 in making the case just with the idea that this presents between 2015 and 17 a unique window for us. There are great job readiness programs out there. I'm working with Wendy Sneed, who's the Director of Social Services, on this. That's why I call it a public-private partnership. So there are great programs out there, but it's not easy to get the right people who need them to them. And so my idea, when working with the poor, relationships are of primary importance, and rather than just try to offer another meeting, let's find a bunch of great volunteers, of mentors, coaches, train them up, and meet the poor where they are. To become mentors and coaches to folks who maybe are just that much below where they need to be, in terms of getting onto the radar, in terms of getting visible and competitive to get these new jobs that are going to be developing over the next couple of years. Where would we go? Places like food pantries, church services, county and school gatherings, yard sales, you name it. We would also, and if you see the bottom of that page, I'd be looking, what I'm looking to you to tonight is as a referral source. I'll get to that at the end, but we'd be asking the Board of Supervisors, agencies, Sheriff's Office and courts, Head Start, DSS, food pantry personnel, churches, etc., for referrals, both for the mentors and coaches, folks who are capable, and if you turn to the second page there, these are folks who are going to learn the technical stuff of where to point people in terms of what's out there, but they're going to develop a relationship. It's personal, to work hand in hand with 1 or 2 or 3 people to help get them to the place, where they can enter into the work culture. So the kinds of people I think we're looking for here are folks who are capable of moving between tribes, who are capable of stepping out of whatever the middle class world that they live in is, and be able to sort of rub elbows and work hand in hand and develop relationships with those who are poor, who have had to develop different sets of values over time. I think of Ruby Payne and the whole idea of bridges to poverty. That would be part of our training program for all of our people. So basically what I'm asking you tonight is I'd like a recommendation from each of you. Who might be a good mentor or coach? Who do you know? Who can you talk to that might be a good mentor or coach? Somebody that over this period would be willing to sort of spend time with people to help 1, 2, 3 people from Caroline County. Give them that little bit that they need to get to the next level. Also, I'd like you to be thinking of who might be candidates. Maybe a person who's capable of full employment but who's been held back, perhaps chronically underemployed, but it could be education, previous incarceration, loss of confidence in the ability to compete, resulting from generational poverty, fear of leaving the familiar, loss of benefits, transportation, etc. We think we can find there are people that we've seen who are ready to go the next step. And just like those of us who got to go the next step, we all need a little help. I'd love to see this happen in this historic window and not waste it. And not waste it. Because we could easily waste it. The organization plan, initially what I'm looking for, I'll be done in a minute, to initiate a test group in the beginning of the year, beginning now, but really beginning in the new year, of a dozen mentor coaches working with a dozen candidates. Iron out get rid of the bugs. find out they'd go through an abbreviated training that Wendy and her friends from Department of Social Services, together with the other agencies around here who have great programs, are designing. Then the larger picture is to recruit from clubs, churches, agencies, etc., a cadre of 30 to 60 mentor coaches between now and February. To recruit candidates between now and May. To train the mentor coaches between March and May, and then enter into the full court press, what I'm just calling a full court press, between June of 16 and August of 17, to get in touch with as many folks as we can who are perhaps underemployed, who have never had the full taste, and get them ready to enter into the work culture. My contacts are right there, and just my request to you is on the back page, and I have more of these. I'll just leave them in the chair for anybody here.
Give them to Mr. Parton.
Okay.
Parton.
On the back page, of course, since I'm a priest, I'm probably a little biased, but I'm asking you, who do you know who you think might make a good mentor coach or a good candidate? You know the characteristics I've spoken of. Then I'll add in, maybe say a little prayer before speaking with him or her or calling him or her up. If they want more information, all the coordinates for Wendy and for me are in there. And then we'd like to hear from that man or woman. We'd like to hear so that we know that this is something they're doing on themselves. But please keep us in your prayers. I hope I'll get names from you. I'm asking them from a lot of other people too. But that as this grows, I think we'll have a solid organization. And God willing, it could be a very special time for many people in our county and turn a big corner. So I thank you.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time. And I will just add that Jimena has the workforce program, and that certainly ties into what you're doing here, and just another way that we're trying to make sure that Caroline County residents are available for these jobs and find out basically the skills that are necessary and ways we can train people such that they will be ready to fill these positions when they come. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Mr. Chairman, could I have one thing?
I'm sorry, Mr. Thomas.
That's fine. We don't normally make comments after public comment, but Father Jay is part of the ministers' conference that we meet with monthly, and as part of that, Father Jay took it upon himself to develop this program, and I suggested he come to the board because I thought it would be a great story that would be in the newspapers, and if we could get that additional publicity, it would be a big help for the program. So I did say it would be a great story to have in the newspaper, didn't I? Didn't I? Okay. So I think it's a great story to have in the newspaper and to make sure that we start this program off right. And Father Jay, we appreciate it, and I think I have your note copy.
Okay. Thank you, Floyd.
Okay, thank you.
You got a name already?
Are there other persons who would like to speak under the public comment portion of our meeting? Come forward now.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mrs. Hayes is here in reference to an item, let's see, 10. Item 10 on the agenda. If you will allow her to speak during the item, during the discussion on item 10, that would be great, and she will not have to do it during public comment period. But if you do not allow her to speak during public or during that particular discussion, then I would ask her to come in and let you know.
We will allow you to speak during the presentation.
We're going to
not the presentation, but the agenda item, item 10. So when we get to agenda item 10, you may come.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes.
Okay. Any others wanting to speak on the public comment? Are there any other persons who would like to speak under the public comment section of our meeting? Seeing no one with the intention or desire to speak, I will close the public comment section of our meeting. That takes us to public hearings. Our agenda item 4, which is a text amendment, 5, which is a rezoning, and and 6. 4 and 5 have been deferred. Well, my understanding is there was a problem with the advertising, and they were not advertised the length of time that's necessary, so the board cannot make a decision on 4 or 5 tonight anyway. So they have been deferred. And of course, agenda item 6 has been postponed. Now, if there is someone here who would like to speak to 4 or 5, if you are here and you came for that, I can't open a public hearing because we can't have the public hearing. But I will allow you to come and speak on the text amendment or the rezoning if there is someone who would like to do that. If not, the public hearing will be rescheduled and you will have an opportunity to come at that time. Okay, seeing no one with the intent or desire to speak, agenda item 6 is postponed, so that takes us to unfinished business. Special exception 03-2015, Auburn Properties, LLC owner, partnership Verizon Wireless is the applicant. Okay, Mr. Fincham.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, action on this item was deferred from your last board meeting to allow staff and council additional time to review a condition number 15, which had been added after the Planning Commission made its recommendation. Staff and the board obviously are interested in providing rural broadband service to Caroline County, and actually there's a text amendment later on tonight that we would ask you to take a look at to allow us to look at our ordinance to expand those opportunities. However, staff noted its concern with condition number 15 at your last meeting, and after further discussion with council, we believe that it's probably not appropriate to make that a condition of the special exception permit. And with that, we would recommend that if the board is going to approve this, that you approve it with the original 14 conditions.
Okay, board members have questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Thomas?
Mr. Fincham?
Yes, sir.
Just for the clarity of all those who may or may not know, condition 15 referenced the county's ordinance that required a new antenna to have a public broadband location on it, right? Or the ability for us to put a public broadband antenna on it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the conflict actually came because of the 2001 or 2005 Telecommunications Act, which is actually out of date, but that's a whole other congressional story. But because that act conflicts and says we can't make this requirement, that's why you dropped condition 15.
That, as well as some language that was added to the Code of Virginia relative to conditions, board approvals, et cetera. But yes, there is state law that we believe is inconsistent with that condition.
And I had to catch my tongue there for a second. But the state law really has nothing to do with the real issue, because it's county, federal. That's really the issue. The applicants are back there, right? Would they have any problem? I'm not asking, I'm not asking for anything, I'm just asking a question. Would you consider putting hardware on the tower? I'm very much in favor of your application. Would you be willing to put hardware on the tower to possibly support something when we got this resolved? Huh?
What's the condition?
No, I'm not. I'm asking if they would put hardware on there. You can say no. It's not a condition. I'm just asking them. I can ask. They can say no, it won't hurt my feelings. Ben, is it wrong for me to ask? You don't have to answer that. Go ahead. Because I'm going to ask anyhow. We're not, I've already explained the fact that that it's against or there's a conflict with the federal legislation. It's not a condition. I'm just asking you, when you construct it, would it be a problem if you put hardware up there for an antenna once we resolve this issue? That's all I'm asking. Go ahead.
My name is Jeff Geiger. I'm an attorney for Suckle Partnership doing business with Verizon Wireless, representing the applicant this evening. We welcome any county emergency communication equipment to come on our tower for free. Any commercial enterprise, any of our competitors, the EDA that you are thinking of forming for broadband service is a commercial competitor. We would welcome them. You just pay rent. Same rent that AT&T would pay, that Intellis would pay, that type of thing.
Now, the emergency...
I can't give you that for free because that becomes a regulatory taking under Kilo. And at that point,
That's why you said the lawyer instead of engineer, right?
And my hunch is the statute your county attorney is thinking about says that it is illegal. It was the change this past July that it's illegal for you to impose an unconstitutional condition as a part of a rezoning action, such as a special exception. And if you do, we can challenge it in court, and we
Right.
get attorney's fees.
Right.
And it's really the attorney's fees that you really don't want.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thomas. I think, we've gotten the answers. You're certainly welcome to talk with him as long as you want to after the meeting, but
I'd be happy to stick around and explain,
Oh, I understood.
a bit further.
I understood what you said.
thank you.
I'm not a lawyer, but I understood what you said.
Thank you.
Okay,
What's wrong with asking?
how does the board wish to handle this special exception?
I'll make a motion to approve special exception 03-2015, the Auburn Properties LLC owner.
I'm just going to second it and thank them for putting the hardware up.
It's been moved and properly second that we would approve special exception
Mr.
03-2015
Fincham, I think, has an addition.
As recommended by the Planning Commission.
as recommended by the
Recommend-
planning
I'll
commission.
amend for that.
Okay, 14 conditions.
I already had mine in there, so we're good.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries 5-1. Okay. All right, that takes us to agenda item number 8, continued discussion of possible county ownership of the former Frog Level Volunteer Rescue Squad. We talked about this in our last meeting. Board members had concerns. Board members have questions for Chief Loftus or how would you like to
I
address
think
this issue?
we included everything in the packet that we've been able to uncover with the property, and if you want to move forward, we do believe for liability purposes that we get the second phase of the environmental study completed.
Okay, so we need a motion to do that for the second phase of the environmental study. Okay, is that? Obviously, we need to do this because if there's a need or if there's something there that's,
We don't own the building. We don't need to do anything. At this point in time, we don't own the building, so we don't know anything about it. And at this point, with the liability that was pointed out in this, I don't see why we would go forward.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, this is in my district, and I think there are a few uncertainties, and I'm just not sure that I'm willing to go to phase 2 and spend $6,000 or $5,600 of taxpayers' money to determine if we should take over this property without, and possibly not run into other situations. I just don't think we should do it.
and I certainly respect that. I guess my only thought was, I was looking at how much the building is valued at. And I understand that $6,000 is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money in comparison to the total value of the property. And I don't know whether the board would want to give away or walk away from a building with that value without knowing whether or not, I mean, I guess I would rather lose $6,000 than to give away the value of that building, because we may find that there's not a problem. So, but it's a board decision, and I concur with the majority.
And I agree with what you're saying, Mr. Chairman. It's one of those things where you just have to go on your gut feeling. We don't know for sure if we spend the money and what's the return on the investment from my perspective for the taxpayer. And I just, based on the conversation that we had last meeting, I think there were some findings in the soil, as I recall, that indicate there's a great possibility that we could end up with an elephant that we can't eat in the room. So I'd assume not to bring the elephant in the room and let somebody else deal with that.
Okay, is there a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Can we,
I'm sorry, Mr. Black?
I just have a couple of questions. If the county were to take this building over, what would it exactly be used for? I guess that's,
Well,
What is the-
that would be what the board would need to decide, I would think would be if you just want to get the property to then put it up for sale, Mr. Emmer's probably indicated not being in the chain of title is probably better. If you have a need for the facility, and we've outlined the work that needs to be done there, regardless of whether there's any soil contamination, it's not a need that the fire department or the rescue squad needs. We run rescue calls today out of Frog Level Fire Department. The second floor is our quarters, our day room, our sleeping quarters, our kitchen. Everything is already in Frog Level Fire, where we run active paid crews and volunteers out of. So we have no plans, and it's not in a location for storage for the fire department. They run all their offices right here in Bowling Green. So the only express use has been from the sheriff's office of some need for the facility, but I don't know if there's anybody here with none of the upper management here to talk about what that need necessarily would be. But if there's really no defined county need for the facility, and we ultimately can get it and sell it, then that's the risk you take of getting in the chain of title with a contamination problem. So then if you think you're going to do that, you need to do the study so you don't take the property and take the so-called elephant. There are things that would happen to the organization if they want to sell it. Being a nonprofit, there's only certain things they're going to be able to do with that funds if they were to sell the property.
so I guess my question is this. This is, I mean, this building is, I saw about $250,000. Is that with the
That's
property?
the assessed
Assessed
value on the
value.
books.
What, I mean, I guess my question is, what's the harm to do this? If we do the study and find out it's badly contaminated, we can still walk away, correct?
Your harm would be $6,000.
No harm.
$6,000.
$6,000.
But if you don't do it and you give it away, then you've given away $200,000.
Well, I mean, I just think it's a minimal risk, or they're giving it to us.
Yeah, nothing's free.
But now, the
smart
building
enough to
again
know- I'm
actually
smart enough to
belongs
know that it's
to
not
the
free.
Frog Level Rescue Squad,
Correct.
which is basically defunct because they didn't have enough members to be chartered.
But they still have an
Well, but they still own the
organization.
building. As long as they're a corporation or some legal entity, they can own the real estate. They could own the real estate forever as long as they continue to be that entity. They simply can't run calls because they're
Right,
not
they're-
licensed by the
They're not
county.
recognized by the state to run calls.
They would then, they probably would start paying taxes on it. They probably would no longer be tax exempt because they're not doing anything, but I don't know enough facts to tell you that for a fact. But if they sell the property, then generally speaking, under the way the IRS regulations would read and would probably be in their charter, but I don't know that for a fact either, they would have to dispose of the money to a similar organization, which could mean that they could give it to another squad, volunteer squad, or they could give it to the county because it operates some. They can't just divide up the money amongst whoever's left. Has to go to another tax-exempt organization.
And they're willing to donate it to the county. So, I mean, it's a minimal risk, again, that's what I said before, of $6,000, and we can $5,600. We can walk away, but we at least, we confirm one way or the other. You know,
I guess, and that's been my whole point all the time. I don't, if they're willing to give it to the county, and I'm not saying we need to take it, but I would be willing to spend $6,000 versus giving away or not accepting a $250,000 building.
and will the result of this be what the remediation is?
Mr. Shebel, would they give us the remediation?
Would they
Methods.
create a remediation plan as part of this?
Once the report's done, it has to be submitted to the EQ. Once the funds are there, if it deems.
Once the study has been done, if it's deemed that there is a site that needs to be cleaned, the report does have to be filed to DEQ to let them know of the findings. And then DEQ, along with whoever the owner was that was going to clean that up, would have to work out a remediation plan that would be approved by DEQ. And that's when really you could figure out what that budget's going to be.
So they could find out that there's a problem. We're going to say the problem's too big for us to be involved in, and then the frog level rescue squad is going to be responsible for hundreds of thousands of dollars of cleanup. And they don't have any, okay.
Are there any grants or anything out there from the state DEQ to help with that?
Superfund money.
DEQ is a little wishy-washy on this particular subject due to the fact that tanks have already been removed. If the tanks were still underground, we would have to remove the tanks, or Frog Level Rescue would have to move them, and then there would be grant funding to cover any remediation. Since the tanks have already been gone, it doesn't qualify for that grant. It's a gray area. They're not willing to give me an answer today of whether it would be covered or not, because they would have to run it up their chain of command to figure out if it's something they could approve or not, and without them knowing whether it's even a project, they don't even want to consider it till they know whether there's an issue or not. So I don't have affirmative yes or no answer on that.
What happens if everything goes as we've talked about? There's contaminated soil there, DEQ gets involved, and they say, okay, and Caroline County says, no, we don't want the property after we found out it's going to cost us several $100,000. It stays with Frog Level Volunteer. They are defunct, if you will. What happens then?
I mean, there's nobody there that was able to pay for that, so I don't know what that ramification would be that time. The state more than likely would have to end up figuring out how they're going to do it anyhow. So
State would probably end up having to clean it up themselves anyway.
Right, and they'd probably use the grant funding to be able to do that. But they won't give me an answer until we know whether the soil is contaminated or not.
It's probably worth $6,000.
Okay, so how does the board wish to address this? I see both sides of the issue, but we have to make a decision.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion that we at least invest in the environmental site assessment for the value of $5,600. I think that is a good faith effort on behalf of the county to make sure this site is actually clean. We're not going to have anything to do with the cleanup, but it would at least benefit the neighborhood to know there is an issue. And if it's not an issue, then the county has the option of turning the building over or selling the building. So that's the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So moved and properly second that we invest the necessary funds to see if there are issues within the building or the soil.
One question.
Okay, question?
Mr. Emerson, do we have any additional exposure in finding this out?
No, as long as you're not in the chain of title, you should not have any exposure just because you had the permission of the owner to have the study done and have the test done.
That's a good, do we have written permission from the owner to do this? Can we defer this until we get some sort of written something so that we're not trespassing, finding out, and doing something we shouldn't?
Why don't we proceed on the understanding that Mr. Sheba will get written permission from the owner?
Yeah, we won't proceed until we...
Can I amend your motion that we...
No, you can never amend my motion. What we can do is say that we are going to proceed, and I will amend my motion to direct staff to ensure that we have permission from the owner.
Written permission.
Written permission from the owner to allow us to proceed.
Mr. Thomason, not to exceed $5,600?
Of course.
Okay, do you amend your second?
Second.
Okay, it's moved and properly second that we would proceed, given the fact that we get written permission from the owner, giving us permission to
Mr.
sign
Emerson
that.
will write that permission slip for us.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Okay, 5-1. Okay. That takes us to agenda item number 9, lease agreement with Virginia Department of General Services for Virginia Health Department offices at Community Services Center.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we've been battling, for lack of a better word, this lease renewal with basically the health department. They used to do their own leases, and then it was taken over a few years ago by the Department of General Services. We actually brought a lease to you that we had done with the health department and both the dental clinic when they split up, and Central Virginia took over the dental clinic, and sent that to the health department after you all had approved it, and they just sort of sat on it, and finally General Services showed up and said, well, they can't agree to a lease, we have to. And so we've worked on a number of issues, and they wanted less square footage, and so we'll be leasing them less square footage. And so we kind of had agreement on where they would be and where the dental clinic would be, and then they sent us how many page lease? 40 or 50 page lease agreement that Mr. Emerson worked on, and I basically said, why don't we just modify the lease we had done with them in the past, and the one you had approved into the fall of 2013, and so we sent that back, and that wasn't good enough, and so we've we've never really gotten agreement. I think they're down to 35 pages. We've included both leases in your packet. The main difference is they want a 10-year lease with no increase in rent, and I mean, and they want to base it off of what they've been paying now, which that amount hadn't changed in a number of years. We had increased the rent in that one we did in 13 per square foot. So you have two options. I guess we can adopt their language and move forward, or we can adopt the lease that Mr. Emerson and the staff has put forth that we thought we'd agreed to, and send that to them and see what they do. And if they don't take anything, then I think they would stay month to month at their current rate, year to year.
It actually is it would normally be month to month if that lease had just ended, but in looking back at the original lease, which is really old, I've forgotten now, 2005 or 2001, anyway, it's really old. It had an annual renewal, automatic renewal clause in it. So if whatever the notice period, if you don't give notice during the notice period that you want to terminate the lease, and either side can do that, then it automatically renews for another 1 year. So it would actually continue if you didn't sign a new lease, and if neither side gave notice that they were going to terminate it and vacate the premises, then it would just continue year to year under the terms of that lease. And you could give them notice of we're increasing the rent as of, if before the notice period ends for terminating the lease for the succeeding year, you could give them notice of a rent increase to be effective in that succeeding year, because it would give them time to terminate if they wanted to. And if they didn't, then the rent increase would be effective for that coming year. And I think that the term of that lease is in August. I think it's August 31, if I remember correctly, when it terminates each year.
Do they pay their own electricity? I know it's a separate function of the building, so they pay their own electricity and...
We pay that, and then they
Heating.
we bill them for all these things. And that's some of the convoluted, if you go to page 2 of operating expenses, their agreement is more convoluted than what we had put forth. And because we're doing shared space in the building, the dental clinic's in there, we're going to be in there with 4 rooms that they no longer want to rent. We're going to build a wall with an emergency exit, and we'll have 4 rooms for storage of some things that's desperately needed. We've got square footage basis for those things, so we take the bill and divide everything back.
A pro rata, basically a pro rata, which is a fairly simple way to do it, and we probably spent a half a page or so to describe how that would happen. The lease that came from the state has 4 pages on how to divide up operating expenses, gives them the right to audit what you do, and you have to pay a penalty if you're off by a certain percentage. I mean, it would be a great lease if you're leasing a couple of floors in the Bank of America building or something, but for 4,000 square feet in Caroline County, it's a little overdone, in my opinion. I mean, we could go through and try to cut some more out of it and make it more reasonable and see what they say.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I'm going to make a motion that we send them the county lease and ask them if they would like to sign it. If not, have a nice day.
Second?
So moved and properly second that we would send them the county lease, and it would then be up to them to determine if they want to continue renting the space. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, motion carries. Okay, that takes us to agenda item number 10. And this is a possible amendment of ordinance to prohibit the keeping of dangerous, wild, exotic, or vicious animals. And my understanding here, this agenda item is in reference to a landowner who has several primates, I believe, and did not have a problem until we did the ordinance on wild and exotic animals, but since we have, excuse me, okay, since we passed the ordinance, there has been an issue, and I believe the owner has talked to you, Mr. Akers, if you would like to.
They have, and let me say that the owner of these primates contacted me a couple of weeks ago, and she did not, first of all, know about the exotic animal ordinance that was in place, and through the circumstances, the Sheriff's Department found out about them and has now given her until November the 30th to remove them from Caroline County. The board has, it's been placed before each board member, a packet, and inside that packet there's a letter from Dr. Hayes as well as her superior with the Food and Drug Administration, is it? Yeah, the Food and Drug Administration, as well as pictures of the primates and the holding pens of the primates. As Mrs. Hayes had explained to me, these primates are small, and they weigh approximately 6 pounds. Several of them do. 2 of them, I believe, she indicated weighed 8 pounds. She has had these primates for many, many, many years. I believe, I'm correct, Mrs. Hayes, you said about 16 years on some of them. So I don't believe when the board approved the exotic animal ordinance that it was our intent to deal with animals such as this. You know, I don't know if we can go back and amend the ordinance to put a weight restriction or a size restriction or a type of exotic animal, but I just don't believe that we thought in terms of these were the type of dangerous animals that we were trying to protect the citizens of Caroline County from. And so I asked Mrs. Hayes, well, she asked for my help, and all I could do is come to this board and see if the board would be agreeable to amend the ordinance based on what the attorneys say we can do to give her relief with the primates that she has had for a number of years. And that's why we're here. Mrs. Hayes is here. I'd like, if the board, if you would allow, Mr. Chairman, for her to come and explain as to what these primates mean to her and how long she's had them. And
Yeah. Dr. Hayes, you may come forward at this time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. As my primates, I own 6 of them. One of them is a Vervex. She's my largest one. She weighs about anywhere between 8 to 10 pounds. Then I own 3 brown lemurs. They basically weigh about 5 pounds. And then I have 2 capuchins. So they range in age from 1.5 to 17 years old. My Vervex is 15. My oldest brown lemur is 17. And his 2 half-sisters are 4 years old. My capuchins are the youngest ones. My primates have they've been with me ever since they was infants. I basically bottle raised them. They came from our approved breeding facility that's inspected, that's been approved by the agriculture department. I'm not a breeder, I'm not an exhibitor. Basically, my animals are my kids. I just always had a love for primates ever since I was in high school. My primates, they don't come out with the public. They basically, I'm the caretaker of them, so they only with me. They in the house. As you have a picture of the building I built for them, it's got an alarm system on, which actually caused a problem with the animal control people. When my alarm went off, it was a false alarm, and the sheriff department noticed the animals there and had the animal control come out. They have no interaction with people. They've never gotten loose in the public. They're not aggressive. Basically, they meet the 3 exemption criteria that you have. The first one is they won't do any damage to the ecology. First of all, they won't get released. And they're very warm-blooded animals, so if they get out in Virginia, they're not going to survive. Don't have the right food for them, so they can't do that, and they won't breed, and so they're not going to end up being breeding and have animals that's going to be dangerous to the environment. Basically, the care for them is no different than taking care of a dog or a cat because they're small. When I have to take them to my vet, I have a vet that specializes in exotics. I can put them in a dog carrier case and take them to the vet. They can't open it up. They don't open up the locks on their cages. So the likelihood of them ever escaping is slim to nothing. The other thing is that, number B, that's not going to be a problem either. So basically, they meet all the criteria that's for the exemption. So I would like you to be able to grandfather my animals in, or give me an exemption so they can stay with me. Basically, I won't get any more primates. They will live with me until they die or I die, whichever comes first. So that's basically why I'm in front of you today. And if you have any questions,
Okay, I guess, board members first. Board members have questions?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one of Mr. Emerson, if you would allow me.
Certainly.
Can we put an exemption in to the current ordinance that would be dealing with the size or the weight or the type of exotic animal?
You can amend the ordinance in any way that you choose to amend it. But the only way you can amend the ordinance would either be through the normal public hearing process.
I understand that.
Or possibly through an emergency, if you found an emergency to exist.
Well, the emergency would be she's been given until the 30th of November to remove the animals from Caroline County. And I'm not sure that we can process a
do an
public
emergency
hearing
ordinance.
and all of those type of things. I'm sorry?
We can do an emergency ordinance.
Yeah, I think